Sometimes, life has a way of throwing the unexpected at us, events that challenge everything we thought we knew about ourselves, the people around us, and the world we live in. For me, that moment came when everything I had built, everything I believed in, was torn apart. I had it all: success, a loving family, and a future I could be proud of. But in an instant, I lost it. Betrayal. Deceit. And a truth so painful, I didn't know how to face it. The one person I trusted the most turned out to be the one who had shattered everything. But through the pain, I realized something. We all have the power to rise from the ashes. To rebuild. To change the course of our own stories. This is the journey of how I learned to face betrayal, rebuild my life, and ultimately find a way back to the people and purpose that mattered most. This is my story. A story of loss, recovery, and transformation. A story of building something meaningful in the wake of destruction. And today, I want to share it with you. Jackson Hale was a successful corporate lawyer who had always prided himself on his work ethic. His life, though filled with achievements, was often overshadowed by the growing strain in his marriage with his wife, Ava. She was the supportive partner when they met, but over the past year, things had begun to shift. Jackson found himself spending more time at the office, while Ava's behavior seemed increasingly erratic. She often came home late from her job at a prestigious art gallery, and their conversations grew more strained. The small cracks in their marriage became impossible to ignore when their daughter, Lily, dropped a subtle hint. At dinner one evening, she casually mentioned, "Mom says she's meeting someone tonight after work, again." It was the first real sign of something deeper brewing beneath the surface. Jackson couldn't shake off the nagging feeling that something was off. He couldn't help but wonder if his growing suspicions were justified or just a product of his busy life and lack of attention. But his gut told him otherwise. One evening, Jackson returned home early from work, hoping to surprise Ava. He found her phone on the kitchen counter, unlocked and unattended. In a moment of weakness, curiosity overcame him, and he scrolled through her messages. That's when he saw it, an intimate exchange between Ava and Theo, a renowned art curator who she had been working closely with over the past several months. It was clear they had been having an affair. Devastated, Jackson confronted Ava, and though she denied it at first, the truth eventually came pouring out. Ava admitted not only to the affair but also to her increasing emotional detachment from their marriage. Worse still, Jackson discovered that Theo wasn't just an affair partner. He had convinced Ava to invest money into a risky, illegal art scheme, jeopardizing both their finances and their future. Jackson was in shock. The woman he had built his life with, the person he thought he knew, had betrayed him not just emotionally but also financially. As the realization set in, he became determined to protect their assets and their daughter, Lily. He spent sleepless nights gathering evidence, contacting private investigators, and working with financial experts to understand the full extent of the damage Ava and Theo had caused. The more he uncovered, the deeper the betrayal ran. Ava's involvement with Theo's art scam had already cost them tens of thousands of dollars, and their home was at risk. Worse still, Ava's recklessness had dragged Lily into this mess. Jackson knew he had to act quickly, not just to protect his financial future but also to keep his daughter safe from the fallout. Jackson hired a top lawyer, Sarah Foster, and quietly started building a legal case against Theo and Ava. He focused on documenting everything: messages, financial records, and even Theo's criminal history. As much as it pained him, Jackson knew he couldn't rely on Ava to undo the damage she had caused. Her plea for forgiveness fell on deaf ears. The trust was shattered beyond repair. While he prepared for the legal battle ahead, Jackson began focusing on his career, immersing himself in work as a way to distract from the emotional turmoil. But Lily's presence at home was the only constant that kept him grounded. He focused on being the father she needed, shielding her from the worst of the chaos while maintaining an air of stability. The day of reckoning came when Jackson, along with his lawyer Sarah, confronted Ava and Theo. With irrefutable evidence, Jackson exposed Theo's criminal activities and Ava's role in the scheme. Theo was arrested, and Ava, though not arrested immediately, was implicated in the fraud charges. The truth about their affair was now public, and their reputations were tarnished beyond repair. Ava begged for Jackson's forgiveness, pleading that she had lost herself in the whirlwind of the affair and her new venture. But Jackson, cold and resolute, refused to offer any form of absolution. His priority was to protect Lily and ensure that their family could recover from the devastating blows Ava had dealt. As the months passed, the legal proceedings slowly unfolded. Ava faced financial penalties and was placed under investigation for her role in Theo's scam. Jackson, though scarred, remained focused on providing stability for Lily. He poured his energy into his work and found success, finally making partner at his law firm. But the most fulfilling aspect of his life was the bond he was rebuilding with Lily, who, despite the trauma, remained close to him. Though Jackson had been hurt, he didn't let the betrayal define him. He began to focus on his own healing, joining a support group for divorced men, attending therapy, and rebuilding his own identity. Slowly, he found peace in his own strength, knowing that he was making the right decisions for his family. With the legal battles behind them, Jackson found himself at a crossroads. His career was thriving, but his personal life was still uncertain. He had learned to navigate life on his own terms, with the lessons of the past serving as a guide. His relationship with Lily grew stronger with each passing day, and Jackson knew that the future, while uncertain, was one they could face together. Then, unexpectedly, Jackson met Clara, a fellow lawyer at a professional seminar. She had a quiet strength about her, and their conversations quickly turned into a deep connection. Jackson didn't know if he was ready to open his heart again, but for the first time in a long time, he felt the possibility of something new. Months passed, and Jackson continued to rebuild his life. He focused on strengthening his relationship with Lily, making sure she felt secure and loved despite everything that had happened. Their bond deepened as they shared small moments, cooking dinner together, attending Lily's school events, and spending weekends exploring the city. Jackson, now more present in her life than ever, realized that his happiness didn't depend on a perfect relationship with anyone but himself and his daughter. Clara, who had entered Jackson's life as an unexpected acquaintance, slowly grew from a supportive colleague into something more. Their conversations were no longer just about work but about life, dreams, and experiences. She had a quiet wisdom about her that attracted Jackson, and for the first time in a long while, he allowed himself to feel something beyond the bitterness and anger that had consumed him for so long. But despite the growing connection with Clara, Jackson remained hesitant. His scars from the betrayal were still fresh, and he feared repeating the mistakes of the past. Could he truly open his heart to someone again? Could he ever trust a woman the way he had once trusted Ava? Clara, however, didn't push him. She respected his space and allowed him the time he needed to heal. Jackson knew he was no longer the man he once was, his sense of self had shifted, and he had learned to value his independence, his career, and his relationship with Lily above all else. One evening, as they sat on a park bench after a work event, Clara looked at him with understanding in her eyes. "You don't have to rush into anything, Jackson," she said softly. "But I want you to know, I'm here, no matter what." Jackson felt a wave of gratitude wash over him. Clara wasn't just offering him a chance at love, she was offering him acceptance of the person he had become through his struggles and losses. For the first time in a long while, Jackson realized that maybe he didn't have to figure everything out immediately. He didn't have to have all the answers. As Jackson grew closer to Clara, he also made strides in confronting the lingering wounds of his past. He began to see Ava not just as the woman who had betrayed him, but as a person who had her own struggles and flaws. It wasn't about excusing her actions, but about accepting that people could change, even if they didn't do so in the way he had hoped. Ava had chosen her path, but Jackson could not allow her decisions to dictate his future. Through therapy and introspection, Jackson found the strength to let go of the resentment that had weighed him down for so long. He couldn't erase the past, but he could choose how he responded to it. His healing journey wasn't linear, and there were still moments when he felt the sting of betrayal, but he had come to understand that the power lay in how he chose to move forward. One afternoon, Jackson found himself walking through the city, deep in thought. He had just wrapped up a major case at work, and the future seemed promising. His relationship with Lily was stronger than ever, and he had achieved a sense of balance between his professional and personal life. He had made peace with his past and was ready to embrace the future, whatever it might bring. Suddenly, his phone buzzed. It was a message from Clara. "I've been thinking about us. Maybe we should take this one step at a time, no pressure. But I'd really like to see where this goes." Jackson smiled to himself. There was something freeing in the simplicity of her message. No expectations, no rush, just a quiet invitation to explore the potential of a future together. He replied with a single line, "I'd like that too." As he stood there, looking out at the city skyline, Jackson felt a sense of calm wash over him. The future, once clouded with uncertainty, now seemed full of possibilities. He had faced the hardest trials of his life, betrayal, loss, and rebuilding, and had emerged stronger for it. It wasn't the perfect ending, but it was a new beginning. He thought about his daughter, Lily, and the life they were now building together. No matter what the future held, Jackson knew that as long as they had each other, they could face anything. A few weeks later, Jackson found himself in an unexpected situation. He and Clara had agreed to take things slowly, allowing their relationship to evolve naturally without rushing into anything too soon. However, there was one thing that still lingered in Jackson's mind, his unresolved feelings about the impact of his past, particularly his failed marriage with Ava. One evening, while Jackson was out having coffee with Clara at their usual cafe, the conversation drifted toward the past. Clara asked about his ex-wife, Ava. It wasn't the first time the topic had come up, but something about this moment felt different. Clara looked at him with curiosity, waiting for him to speak honestly. "Do you ever regret it? Your marriage with Ava?" Clara asked softly, her gaze kind but probing. Jackson hesitated for a moment, the weight of the question pressing against him. He looked down at his coffee cup, taking a deep breath. I think I regret how I handled things. But regret is different from wishing it never happened. Ava and we were good together once. I don't think I can just erase all of that. But the betrayal, that's a wound that's not easy to heal." Clara nodded, understanding. "It's not easy, is it? To come to terms with all of it." Jackson looked at her, realizing how much he had come to trust Clara. "No, it's not. But I think I'm learning to make peace with it. Not for Ava, but for me. And for Lily." Clara reached across the table, taking his hand gently. "You're not alone in this, Jackson. You've made it through so much already." He smiled, feeling a sense of gratitude for the quiet support she had given him, even without pushing him to move faster than he was ready for. As time passed, Jackson continued to work on himself. He had made strides in his professional life, with several major architectural projects coming to fruition. Yet, his personal life was still in a constant state of flux. Every now and then, his thoughts would wander back to Ava and what had gone wrong. He couldn't help but wonder if there was any chance they could have done things differently, or if their marriage was doomed from the start. Then, one day, out of the blue, he received a phone call from her. Ava wanted to meet. Jackson hesitated before answering. After everything that had happened, was he ready to face her again? Part of him felt anger bubble to the surface, while another part wondered if this was an opportunity for closure, or for the possibility of finding a way forward. After a moment of internal deliberation, he agreed to meet. They decided on a quiet park, a neutral space where they could talk without the distractions of their past. The day of the meeting, Jackson arrived early. He sat on a bench, looking out at the trees and the gentle movement of the park's small pond. His heart raced in anticipation, but he reminded himself that this was about closure, about moving forward with his life, whether Ava was in it or not. When Ava arrived, Jackson immediately noticed how much she had changed. Her once vibrant appearance seemed more subdued, and her eyes lacked the spark that used to draw him in. She looked tired. For a moment, the years that had passed between them felt more like a lifetime. "Jackson," she said softly, sitting down beside him. "Hi, Ava," he replied, trying to maintain a neutral tone. There was an awkward silence between them before she spoke again, her voice shaky. "I don't know what I was expecting when I reached out, but I had to talk to you. I needed you to know. I'm sorry for everything." Jackson clenched his jaw. The apology, while expected, didn't bring him the sense of relief he thought it would. Instead, he felt a deep ache in his chest, as if the wounds were still raw. "I appreciate the apology, Ava," he said slowly, "but it's not enough. Not after everything. You put me and Mila in a position where we had to rebuild our lives from the ground up. That's not something you can just apologize for and expect it to be fixed." Ava nodded, her eyes downcast. I know. And I don't expect you to forgive me, not right away. But I've spent a lot of time thinking about everything. The betrayal, the lies, the damage I caused." Jackson took a deep breath, exhaling slowly as he turned to look at her. "Don't know if I'll ever forgive you, Ava. But I've learned that I have to move on. For me. For Lily." Ava looked up at him, her eyes filled with tears. "I understand. I just want you to know that I never wanted to hurt you. It was a moment of weakness, and I lost everything because of it." Jackson felt a flicker of something in his chest, maybe sympathy, maybe pity. But he knew that sympathy wasn't enough. He couldn't rebuild his life with the weight of her mistakes hanging over him. "Take care of yourself, Ava," Jackson said finally. "That's all I can say." And with that, the conversation ended. Ava stood up, offering a final, uncertain glance at him before walking away, her figure becoming smaller and smaller until it disappeared into the distance. As Jackson walked away from the park, he felt a strange mix of emotions. There was no grand reconciliation, no forgiveness. But there was a sense of finality. The past, though painful, had been put to rest. And now, it was time for Jackson to focus on the future, on the life he was building with Lily, on his career, and on his own personal growth. Clara continued to be a supportive presence in his life, but Jackson knew that he wasn't ready to rush into anything. He had learned to prioritize his own healing and his daughter's happiness above all else. And yet, as the days passed, he felt something new stir within him, a sense of hope. He wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time in a long while, he felt like he had control over his own story. He could write the next chapter however he chose, and that was enough. The future was uncertain, but Jackson was ready for whatever came next. Weeks had passed since Jackson's conversation with Ava, and though the raw pain of betrayal had softened, the emotional scars still lingered. Life seemed to move forward in small steps, a journey of healing that took time but was gradually shifting Jackson's perspective on life. Mila, his daughter, continued to be his anchor. Her presence was a constant reminder of what truly mattered. No matter how difficult things had been, Mila was his reason for pushing forward, for striving to be better, not just for himself but for her. One evening, as Jackson was preparing dinner for the two of them, Mila came into the kitchen, holding a piece of paper in her hand. "Dad, look! I finished my drawing for the art contest," she exclaimed, her face glowing with pride. Jackson turned from the stove, smiling as he took the drawing from her. It was a picture of the two of them, standing in front of their house, the sun setting behind them. "This is amazing, Mila," he said, his voice filled with pride. "I want you to know how much I love you, Dad. You've been so strong, and I can tell you're getting better," Mila said softly, her eyes filled with admiration. "You're the best dad ever." Jackson's heart swelled with emotion. He had spent so much time trying to heal from his past, but moments like these reminded him that the best thing he could do was to be present for Mila. His daughter was the light that guided him through the darkness, and that gave him strength. "Thank you, Mila," Jackson replied, pulling her into a warm hug. "You make me want to be the best version of myself. And I promise, I'll keep getting better, for you." A few months after his meeting with Ava, Jackson's life started to take new directions. His architectural firm had received several prestigious projects, and his career was on the rise. But despite the success, Jackson couldn't shake the feeling that something was still missing. While his work gave him satisfaction, it was his personal life where he longed for more. One day, Clara invited him out for a casual dinner to celebrate the completion of one of his major projects. Over pasta and wine, their conversation naturally turned to the future. "I think you're in a good place, Jackson," Clara said, offering a gentle smile. "Your career is thriving, Mila is doing great, and you're in a much better place emotionally than you were a year ago." Jackson nodded thoughtfully. "I feel it. But there's something I've been thinking about lately. I don't want to just exist. I want to live, truly live, be more than just a father or an architect. I want to make a difference, you know." Clara leaned forward, her interest piqued. "What do you mean by that?" Jackson hesitated but then found himself sharing the idea he had been nurturing in his mind for some time. "I want to start a non-profit organization. Something that helps underprivileged children, giving them access to art and architecture. I think it's something I could dedicate my time and resources to. I've been fortunate to have a successful career, but I want to give back, to leave a legacy." Clara smiled warmly. "I love that idea. You've always had a heart for helping others, Jackson. This could be the perfect way to combine your skills with your passion." The seed was planted that night, and Jackson couldn't shake the idea. He spent the next few weeks researching the logistics of starting a non-profit, reaching out to contacts in his industry, and learning what was needed to make his vision a reality. As Jackson began to move forward with his plans to establish his non-profit, he encountered an unexpected challenge. One of the prominent architects he had worked with in the past, a man named Victor Reyes, reached out to him. Victor was known in the industry for his philanthropic work, particularly his dedication to creating community spaces for underserved neighborhoods. "Jackson, I've heard about your project. I think it's a brilliant idea," Victor said during a phone call. "I'd love to collaborate with you on this. My firm has worked on several community projects, and I believe we can combine our resources to make a bigger impact." At first, Jackson was hesitant. He had always been independent, preferring to work alone, but something about Victor's offer intrigued him. After meeting with Victor in person, Jackson realized that working together could amplify the reach of his non-profit, and Victor's experience would be invaluable. "Let's do it," Jackson said, shaking Victor's hand. "Together, we can make this something truly meaningful." With Victor's support, Jackson was able to launch the non-profit organization, focused on providing architectural mentorship and resources to children in underprivileged areas. The organization quickly gained attention from both local communities and the broader architecture world, creating a ripple effect of positive change. As Jackson's work with the nonprofit flourished, his personal life took a natural turn toward growth as well. He and Clara continued to explore their relationship at a steady pace, without rushing into anything, but their connection deepened with each passing day. Jackson realized that, for the first time in a long while, he felt truly seen, not just as a father or a businessman, but as a man who had evolved and was still evolving. Mila's art contest win was just one of the many milestones they celebrated together. The family they had rebuilt, piece by piece, was stronger than ever. And as Jackson stood on the rooftop of his firm's new office building, looking out at the skyline he had helped shape, he finally understood that everything he had gone through, every challenge, every heartbreak, every success, had led him to this point. He was finally living life on his terms. Months passed, and the nonprofit that Jackson had worked tirelessly to build began to thrive. However, with success came new responsibilities. One day, Jackson received a call that would challenge everything he thought he had accomplished. A local developer, who had long been a part of the city's elite business circle, approached Jackson with an offer that was hard to ignore. The developer, Matthew Clark, had his eyes on several properties in the city's underprivileged neighborhoods and wanted Jackson to oversee the revitalization projects. "This could be your big break, Jackson," Matthew said confidently over the phone. "Think of it as a way to extend the work you're already doing, but on a much larger scale." Jackson hesitated. The idea of revitalizing these neighborhoods intrigued him, but he also knew the risks involved. This was not just about designing spaces for the community, it was about corporate interests, profits, and potential displacement of the very people his nonprofit aimed to help. There was a thin line between gentrification and genuine improvement, and Jackson wasn't sure he could cross it. His mind raced. Could he balance the commercial world with his commitment to social change? Could he use this opportunity to further his cause without compromising his values? Jackson spent sleepless nights contemplating the offer. Clara, sensing his internal struggle, sat with him one evening, offering a quiet space for him to process his thoughts. "I see the conflict, Jackson," Clara said gently. "On one hand, you have a chance to make a significant impact on the city's future. But on the other, I know you're committed to protecting the people who need help the most. What do you want from this?" Jackson stared out the window, watching the city lights twinkle in the distance. "I don't want to betray what we've built with the nonprofit," he said, his voice filled with uncertainty. "But I also don't want to miss an opportunity to make a bigger change. I just don't know if it's possible to do both without losing myself in the process." Clara placed a hand on his arm. "Maybe you don't have to make a decision just yet. Take your time, think about it, and trust that you'll know the right path when it becomes clear." Jackson appreciated her wisdom, but he couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. The opportunity to collaborate with Matthew Clark was too significant to let pass, but so was the promise he had made to himself and his community. After weeks of reflection and discussions with his team at the nonprofit, Jackson decided to take a bold step. Instead of blindly following the developer's plans, he would use his position to steer the revitalization projects toward community-centered growth. He agreed to meet with Matthew Clark, but on his terms. "I'll take on this project," Jackson told Matthew during their meeting. "But I need the community's voice to be at the heart of every decision. We'll create affordable housing, provide jobs, and make sure the families currently living in these areas are not displaced. If you're in, we'll make it work." Matthew hesitated for a moment, clearly not expecting such a proposition. But after a long pause, he nodded. "Fine. But you'll need to convince the investors. They're not used to these kinds of stipulations." Jackson's heart raced. He knew the uphill battle he was about to face. But he had already started down this path, and he was determined to do whatever it took to protect the community he cared so deeply about. The next few months were filled with constant negotiations, meetings, and compromises. Jackson worked tirelessly to integrate his nonprofit's values into the development projects. At times, it felt like an impossible mission, but Jackson remained steadfast. He found support in unlikely places. Clara, his friends, and even some of his colleagues from the architectural world rallied behind him, recognizing the potential for positive change. Together, they navigated the political and financial complexities, ensuring that the people who would be impacted by the project had a say in its design. Finally, after months of hard work, the first phase of the revitalization project was approved, an affordable housing complex built on a site that had once been neglected and forgotten. Jackson stood on the site with Mila one evening, looking at the construction in progress. The work was far from over, but it was a start, a step toward turning his vision into reality. "This is just the beginning, Mila," Jackson said, smiling at his daughter. "We're doing something that matters." Mila nodded, her eyes sparkling with pride. "I knew you could do it, Dad. You always find a way to make things right." As Jackson continued to lead the charge in reshaping the city's neighborhoods, he also realized that he had reshaped himself in the process. The work was hard, the stakes were high, but Jackson had found purpose beyond personal gain. He had managed to create a balance between his career, his nonprofit work, and his personal life. And through it all, he had learned that success wasn't just about financial achievements or personal accolades, it was about making a difference, leaving a legacy that would have a lasting impact on those who needed it most. Jackson and Clara's relationship blossomed too, as they continued to support each other in their respective endeavors. Their connection was one of mutual respect, shared values, and a desire to build something greater than themselves. As the city skyline continued to evolve, Jackson knew he had finally found the balance he had been searching for. The journey was ongoing, but he was no longer afraid of what lay ahead. With his daughter by his side, his community behind him, and Clara at his side, Jackson was ready for whatever the future held. Years had passed since Jackson had begun his journey of transformation. The revitalization projects had been an overwhelming success, and the once-forgotten neighborhoods now flourished with thriving communities. Yet, amidst all the progress and success, Jackson couldn't completely shake the weight of the past. One afternoon, as he walked through one of the completed developments, a familiar face stopped him in his tracks. It was Lena, the woman who had once been the love of his life, the person who had shattered his world with her betrayal. "Jackson," she said, her voice soft and tentative. "I never thought I'd see you again." Jackson froze for a moment. The memories of their past, the lies, the hurt, and the love, flooded back. But something had changed within him since that time. The pain had softened, the anger had dulled. What once felt like an open wound had now become a scar, still there, but no longer consuming him. "I wasn't expecting to run into you," Jackson replied, his voice steady but distant. "What brings you here?" Lena hesitated, looking at the new buildings that surrounded them. I've been following the work you've been doing here. I'm proud of what you've accomplished, Jackson." He nodded, not sure what to say next. There had been a time when he longed for her to recognize his efforts, to understand the sacrifices he had made. But that time had passed. "I've made a lot of mistakes," Lena continued, her voice trembling slightly. "I've hurt a lot of people, including you. I've spent years trying to understand where I went wrong. And I know it's too late to fix things, but I just wanted to tell you, I'm sorry." Jackson took a deep breath, the weight of her apology settling in. He had never expected it, and yet, here it was, an acknowledgement of the pain she had caused. For a moment, he felt conflicted. Was it possible to forgive her? Or had that chapter of his life already closed? "You don't need to apologize, Lena," he said quietly. "I've moved on. I'm at peace now. And you need to find your own peace." Lena looked at him, eyes filled with remorse and understanding. "I see that. And I hope one day, I can find that peace too." For the first time in years, Jackson felt no bitterness, no anger. He simply nodded, offering her a small, understanding smile. As she turned to leave, Jackson stood there for a moment, reflecting on the journey that had led him here. The years ahead were marked by growth, both personally and professionally. Jackson's work in urban development expanded, and the nonprofit continued to thrive, helping to bring resources and opportunities to more communities. He remained focused on his mission to build spaces where people could feel safe, valued, and empowered. Mila, now a young woman, had blossomed into a confident, compassionate individual who shared her father's dedication to creating change. Together, they traveled the world, seeking out projects that could make a difference in underserved communities. Jackson couldn't be prouder of her. As for his relationship with Clara, it only grew stronger. The two of them had built a partnership based on mutual respect, love, and shared values. They traveled, worked, and even took on new challenges together. But what stood out the most was their unwavering support for one another. One evening, as they sat on the balcony of their new home, a beautiful space overlooking the city, Clara turned to him with a smile. "You've come so far, Jackson," she said, her voice filled with admiration. "I'm so proud of you." "Proud? Of what we've built?" Jackson smiled, his eyes reflecting the city lights below. "We've built something amazing, Clara. And we've done it together." Their love was something solid, something enduring. Jackson had finally found a place of peace in his life. The years of struggle, pain, and growth had led him here. He was no longer haunted by the past. Instead, he looked forward to the future, knowing that he could create something meaningful, something that would leave a lasting impact for generations to come. As the sun set behind them, Jackson thought about everything he had overcome, the betrayal, the rebuilding of his career, his fight to protect the community, and the way he had transformed as a person. All of it had led him here, to this moment of clarity and purpose. Jackson's legacy would be one of resilience, not only in the face of personal betrayal but also in the pursuit of justice and social equity. His contributions to the city, to his community, and to his family would be remembered for years to come. He had become a beacon of hope for those who thought they had no chance, for those who had been forgotten by society. And as he sat beside Clara that evening, with Mila by his side, Jackson knew that his story wasn't defined by the mistakes of the past. It was defined by the strength to rise above them, to forgive, to rebuild, and to keep moving forward. The work he had done, and would continue to do, was a testament to the possibility of change. It was proof that, even in the darkest moments, one could find the strength to rise, to transform, and to make the world a better place. As I look back on everything, I realize that life will always have its challenges. Betrayal, loss, and setbacks are inevitable. But the choice to rise above them, to rebuild, and to find a new path forward, that's something we can all control. My journey wasn't easy, but it's mine. And it's proof that no matter where you start, you can always find your way back to what truly matters. This story is just one of many that remind us of our strength, our ability to adapt, and our power to change our own narratives. And I hope it inspires you to keep pushing forward in your own journey, no matter what challenges life may bring. If this story resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Share your experiences, your challenges, and your victories in the comments below. And if you want to be part of more stories like this, stories of overcoming, rebuilding, and finding hope, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon so you won't miss what's coming next. Thank you for watching. And remember, your story is still being written. So make it a great one.